Hello everyone and good afternoon and welcome to the conference number 34 entitled Permanent Center of Gravity. The objective of this conference is that we understand the importance of dedicating the entirety of our existence to our inner work and how we can achieve the continuity of purposes. So let's start by learning what a center of gravity is. A center of gravity is a point through which the force of gravity acts on a system or object. If we look at our solar system, we will realize how the sun exerts a gravitational force on the planets that revolve around it. Even our planet Earth has its center of gravity, and this pulls objects towards it, including us. If we make this relation respecting to ourselves, we will realize which our center of gravity is, identifying around which things our existence revolves, and we will realize that it is around our personality, since everything we do is done to fit that personality that has us so fascinated. Work, family, profession, friends, partner, our couple, our likes and dislikes, and so on. What we will learn in this conference is how, through the continuity of purposes, to be able to transfer the center of gravity from the personality to the consciousness. The continuity of purposes leads us to set a goal and have the perseverance until we reach it. The continuity of purposes is the only thing that can lead us to fulfill any goal, specifically this transcendental goal, such as the intimate self-realization of our being. However, if there is no true individuality, it is impossible to have continuity of purposes. If the psychological individual does not exist, if many people live within each one of us, if there is no responsible subject, it would be absurd to demand continuity of purpose from someone. We well know that many people live inside a person. Then the full sense of responsibility does not really exist within us. What a determined I affirms in a given moment cannot take on any seriousness due to the concrete fact that any other I can affirm the exact opposite at any other moment. The serious thing about all this is that many people believe that they have a sense of moral responsibility, and they deceive themselves by claiming to always be the same. Many people come to this knowledge and even swear to devote their entire existence to these studies. However, the idol does not last long. Any day, due to such and such a fair or unfair, simple or complicated reason, the person retires from this knowledge. So he quits his job and even joins any other mystical organization and thinks that things are better now. All this coming and going, all this incessant change of schools, sects, religions, is due to the multiplicity of eyes that within us fight among themselves for their own supremacy. Since each eye has its own criteria, its own mind, its own ideas, this change of opinion is just normal. This constant fluttering from organization to organization, from ideal to ideal, etc. The person in himself is nothing more than a machine that sometimes serves as a vehicle for one eye or another. Some mystical eyes deceive themselves. After abandoning this or that sect, they resolve believing themselves to be gods, but they shine like will-o'-the-wisp lights and finally disappear. There are people who for a moment look at esoteric work, and then at the moment when another eye intervenes, they finally abandon these studies and let themselves be swallowed up by life. Obviously, if he does not fight against life, it will devour him. And there are few aspirants who truly do not allow themselves to be swallowed up by life. Existing within us a whole multiplicity of eyes, the permanent center of gravity cannot exist. It is just normal that not all persons self-realize. We well know that the intimate self-realization of the being demands continuity of purposes. And since it is very difficult to find someone who has a permanent center of gravity, then it is not strange that it is very rare the person who reaches deep inner self-realization. It is strange that someone does not abandon their inner work and reach the goal. Something very important that we should know is about the Son experiment. The sacred absolute Son, the universal Christ, or God as some of us call it, is doing a very complicated and terribly difficult laboratory experiment. Within the intellectual animal, mistakenly called man, there are germs that, properly developed, can become them solar men. These germs are found in our sexual gonads. It is that sexual creative energy that, when germinates, leads us to create ourselves internally and to become solar men. However, it is worth clarifying that it is not certain that these germs develop. It is normal that they degenerate and lose, unfortunately, ending the possibility of achieving self-realization. In any case, the germs to convert us into solar men need an adequate environment, since it is well known that the seed in an sterile environment does not germinate. In order for the real seed of man, deposited in our sexual glands, to germinate, a normal physical body is needed, specifically that the mind, the spine, and the sexual apparatus are in an optimal conditions. Also, we'll need an objective knowledge focused on the practice and, of course, the continuity of purpose. If the scientists continue doing tests with the glands of internal secretion, any possibility of development of the mentioned germs could be lost. Although it may seem incredible, ants already went through a similar process in the remote archaic past of our planet Earth. One is filled with awe when contemplating the perfection of a palace of ants. There is no doubt that the order established in any anthill is formidable. Those ants, in times not remotely suspected by the world's greatest historians, were a human race that created a very powerful socialist civilization. Then the dictators of that family eliminated the various religious sects and free will, since all this took away their power and they needed to be totalitarian in the most serious sense. Having eliminated individual initiative and religious rights, the intellectual animal plunged down to the path of involution and degeneration. To all the above, scientific experiments were added, transplants of organs, glands, tests with hormones, etc., etc. The result of that was the gradual shrinking and morphology alteration of those human organisms until they finally became the ants we know. All that civilization, all those movements related to the established social order became mechanical and were inherited from father to son. Today, one is filled with astonishment when seeing an anthill, but we cannot help but lament its lack of intelligence. If we do not work on ourselves, we regress and degenerate frightfully. The experiment that the sun is doing in the laboratory of nature certainly, besides being difficult, has given very few results. Creating solar men is only possible when there is true cooperation in each one of us. The creation of the solar man is not possible if we do not first establish a permanent center of gravity within ourselves. How could we have continuity of purposes if we do not establish the center of gravity in our consciousness? Any race created by the sun certainly has no other objective in nature than to serve the interests of this creation and the sun experiment. If the race does not serve to that purpose, the sun loses all interest in such a race, and it is in fact doomed to destruction and involution. Each one of the races that have existed on the face of the earth has served for the solar experiment. From each race, the sun has achieved some triumphs, reaping small groups of solar men. When a race has borne its fruits, it progressively disappears, falling into involution, as in the case of ants and monkeys. It has been believed that the man has evolved from the monkey. However, the monkeys were another race of men that degenerated. It is also the case that the race disappears violently through great catastrophes, such as the case of Atlantean race, which perished through a great flood. The creation of solar men is possible when we fight for independence from the lunar forces. There is no doubt that all these eyes that we carry within us in our psyche are of an exclusively lunar type. In no way would it be possible to free ourselves from the lunar force if we did not previously establish in us a permanent center of gravity. How could we dissolve the totality of the pluralized I if we do not have continuity of purposes? How could we have continuity of purpose without having established previously in our psyche a permanent center of gravity? Since the current race, instead of becoming independent from lunar influence, has lost all interest in solar intelligence, unquestionably has condemned itself to involution and degeneration. It is not possible for the true man to arise through evolutionary mechanics. We well know that evolution and its twin sister involution are just two laws that constitute the mechanical axis of all nature. We evolve up to a certain perfectly defined point, and then comes the involutionary process. Every rise is followed by a fall and vice versa. We are exclusively machines controlled by different eyes. We serve to the economy of nature. We do not have a defined individuality as many pseudo-esotericists and pseudo-occultists mistakenly suppose. We need to change with maximum urgency so that the germs of man give their fruits. Only by working on ourselves with true continuity of purpose and complete sense of moral responsibility can we become solar men. This implies consecrating the entirety of our existence to esoteric work on ourselves. Those who hope to reach the solar state through the mechanics of evolution deceive themselves and in fact condemn themselves to involutionary degeneration. In the esoteric work, we cannot afford the luxury of versatility. Those who have vain ideas, those who today work on their psyche and tomorrow let themselves be swallowed up by life, those who seek evasions, justifications to abandon esoteric work, degenerate or involute. Some mistakenly leave everything for tomorrow while they improve their economic situation without taking into account that the solar experiment is something very different from their personal criteria and their well-known projects. It is not easy to become a solar man when we carry the moon within us. Remember that the ego is lunar. Earth has two moons. The second of these is called Lilith and lies a little more distant than the white moon called Nahemat. Astronomers usually see Lilith as a lentil since it is very small. This one is the black moon. The most sinister forces of the ego come to earth from Lilith with subhuman and bestial psychological results. The crimes of the Red Press, the most monstrous murders in history, the most unsuspected crimes, etc., etc., are due to the vibratory waves of Lilith. The double lunar influence represented in the human being through the ego that carries within him makes us a true failure, for sure. If we do not see the urgency of giving our entire existence to work on ourselves with the purpose of freeing ourselves from the double lunar force, we will end up swallowed by the moon, involuting, degenerating more and more within ourselves. Certain states that we could well describe as unconscious and subconscious. The serious thing about all this is that we do not have true individuality. If we had a permanent center of gravity, we would really work seriously until we achieve the solar state. Fascinating attractions that in fact often makes almost impossible to understand the urgency of the esoteric work. However, the small margin we have of free will, the Gnostic teaching or oriented towards practical work, could serve as a basis for our noble purposes related to the solar experiment. The vain mind does not understand that we are saying what we are saying here. It listens to this chapter and later forgets all about it. Then comes another book and another, and in the end we end up joining any institution that sells us a passport to heaven, that speaks to us in a more optimistic way, that assures us comforts in the hereafter. This is how people are mere puppets controlled by invisible strings, mechanical dolls, with vain ideas and no continuity of purpose. At this point, we must ask ourselves and answer ourselves seriously and sincerely if we are really willing to dedicate our entire existence to esoteric work on ourselves and make a decision to really commit ourselves to this work. Decision that will take us or that will require us to sacrifice more and more the things of our personality and dedicate more time to the things of consciousness. For this, the first thing we must do is identify what our current center is. And we do this by identifying what things and in what proportion we dedicate time to them. We can observe what time we spend sleeping, what time we spend working, what time we spend on leisure, family and partner, household activities, etc., etc. The next thing we'll do is start taking time away from those things, and we'll start giving it to work to awaken our consciousness. We must include the work with the three factors for the revolution of the consciousness that are the base, the psychological death, the spiritual birth, and the sacrifice for humanity, as well as other practices that are taught in this course, such as meditation, dervishes, the transmutation of cosmic forces, the mantralization of the O, the practice of watching and praying, the astral unfolding, and the mental unfolding, among others. The time must come when the personality only will have the time strictly necessary, while our inner work monopolizes most of our time. It is important that we also know that the urgency of working with ourselves is closely related to the sun experiment, since this race is reaching the maximum degeneration and entering into involution. Therefore, we do not have so much time to do this self-realization work. We must make double efforts to advance as quickly as possible. And well, this has been today's conference. Thank you very much for joining us. Any doubt or question can be left in the comments. Also, we invite you to the next conference next Thursday entitled Explanations about Family and Attachments, where we will learn the types of families that exist and what their functions are and how can we work those attachments that prevents us from advancing on our inner work. Thank you very much. Until next time.